Welcome, weirdos, to Two Weirdos Escaping Religion podcast. I'm Denise Alena, your divine disruptor and spiritual midwife. This is the space where bold souls break free from religious boxes and step into the fullness of their spiritual power. If you've ever felt like you were too much, too loud, too gifted, too curious, this is your home. Here we don't just talk about freedom, we live it. We deconstruct with boldness, we heal out loud, and we walk with God on our terms. So pour yourself some tea, wrap yourself in a warm blanket, and settle in by this virtual fire. This episode is for the ones who never fit in the pews, for the ones who were told they were too much, too loud, too gifted, too bold. If you've ever questioned church culture, felt guilty for using your voice, or tried to make yourself small to be loved by God, you're seen, you're loved, you're safe, and you're celebrated here. Let's start with the hard truth. Religion will often teach us to perform, not to be present. I remember as a teenager sitting in the third pew of church every Sunday, hair done, dress ironed, Bible highlighted and annotated correctly to show and prove to everybody else that I was doing the work. I was a great Christian. I learned early that being good meant to be quiet, to be agreeable, and don't ask uncomfortable questions. So I became a master performer. I smiled even when my heart was breaking. I volunteered even when I was exhausted. I would recite Bible verses when all I really wanted was a hug. Maybe you know what that's like. Maybe you've learned to put on a mask, to hide your doubts, to shrink your dreams because you were told this is what God wants. But the thing is, God never asked for your performance. What he asked for was your presence. What he asked for was a personal relationship. Performance is exhausting. It's about meeting expectations, checking boxes, and earning approval. Presence, relationship, it's about being real. It's about showing up as you are, messy, questioning, honest, open. Isaiah 29:13 says, "These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me." How many of us have honored God with our lips, but kept our hearts locked away, afraid that our true selves, our big feelings, our big emotions would be rejected? Where are you performing in your life? Are you performing for God or are you performing for others? Are you performing in your prayers, reciting what you think you should say instead of what you actually feel? Are you performing in your service? Are you doing things out of obligation, which you're expected to do, and not joy? What about in your relationships? Are you hiding parts of yourself? Are you dimming your light to keep the peace? When you play small, you pay a price. When the costs are high. When you silence your voice for approval, you chip away at yourself. You chip away at your own soul. You start to believe that your questions are dangerous, your insights unwelcome, your gifts too much. And over time, you start to lose touch with your intuition, your access to the Holy Spirit, your God-given compass. I remember a woman at my old church, we'll call her Sister Murray. She was always there. She was always serving, always smiling. But in private, I heard her talking to another member, and she shared that she felt invisible. She felt like she showed up for everybody else, but she didn't even know who she was anymore. And that story, hearing that broke my heart because I could see myself in her. Maybe you do too. Let's talk about burnout. How many of us have signed up for every committee, every potluck, every Bible study, hoping that our service would finally make us feel worthy? But instead of actually feeling fulfilled, we end up exhausted, resentful, and disconnected from our own true calling. God's purpose for you and your life is not limited to church, traditions, or programs. Maybe your ministry is in the boardroom. Maybe it's in the classroom, art studio, the kitchen, maybe even the streets. But when you overperform in church and underlive in your purpose, you miss the unique assignment that God has for you. We can also confuse our obedience to God with loyalty to human rules, and that's a big one. We're taught that obedience is about following the rules. Don't question things, don't challenge, don't rock the boat. But true obedience is about listening to God's voice, even when and if it leads you off of that beaten path. Isaiah 29:13 again. God is not impressed by lip service or empty rituals. He wants your heart. What have you sacrificed to fit in? Take a deep breath. What dreams, desires, and parts of yourself have you sacrificed to fit in? What have you lost by playing small? Sometimes the journey out of smallness is marked by tears, tears of grief, tears of fear, and anxiety, and then eventually hope. Psalms 56:8 says, "You have collected all my tears in your bottle." Psalms 126, "Those who sow in tears will reap with songs of joy." Tears aren't a sign of weakness, they are a sign that your heart is waking up. When I finally was able to admit to myself that I was burnt out and spiritually empty, I cried for days. I was terrified. What do I do now? Where is this new path? I grieved the years that I spent trying to earn love that was already mine. But those tears, they watered the seeds of my new life. If you need to cry, let yourself. Your tears are holy. They're the water that will soften the soil for new growth. So what does it actually mean to show up for God? Saying yes to divine assignments. God's assignments, they don't always come with titles, they don't always come with recognition. Maybe you're called to start a business, write a book, mentor kids, leave a legacy for your children, care for the sick, create art. None of that is any less holy. It's divine placement. A friend of mine started a chess club in his neighborhood. He wasn't a pastor, but he mentored young men. He taught them strategy. He taught them patience. He taught them self-worth. And he changed lives. No pulpit involved, just purpose. You don't have to have a title to be anointed. You don't need to perform to have a purpose. You don't need a platform for a purpose. Release the guilt of seeking validation. When you stop waiting for permission, you step into your power. You release guilt for not fitting in the mold. You stop seeking validation from those who can't see your vision. 1 Corinthians 3:16 says, "You are God's temple. His Spirit lives in you." You've got direct access to God. You can hear Him yourself. You can talk to Him yourself. Trust your spiritual gifts. Your gifts are not an accident. They're literally the fingerprints of God's love on your life. What gifts have you hidden because they didn't necessarily fit into the church's expectations? What passions have you buried? Write them down. Thank God for them. Think about what it would look like to show up fully. Imagine a day where you showed up as your whole self. No shrinking, no apologizing, no hiding. What would you do differently? How would you speak? What would you create? How would you serve? How do you know that you're going to be walking in your true calling? Or how do you know that you're walking in your true calling? You have peace. When you're aligned with your calling, you're going to feel peace. Even when other people don't understand it, even when they reject you for it, when they just don't get it. You're not driven by fear or people pleasing any longer. You're anchored in love. You're anchored in presence. When I left my old church, people called me rebellious. But the level of peace that I felt and the connection that I felt with God was more than worth it. God replaced my anxieties and my fears with assurance. The next way that you'll know is you'll have a heightened discernment and a spiritual clarity. When you stop performing, your spiritual senses sharpen. You can hear God more clearly. You trust your intuition. You'll also find yourself falling into a supernatural alignment. Doors you didn't expect will open. Divine appointments will happen. You meet people who get you and they understand and they support your journey. Acts 5:29 says we must obey God rather than human beings. So that cuts the middleman right out, doesn't it? John 15:19 says, "The world may hate you, but I have chosen you out of it." You're chosen. So say this with me. I am not rebellious, I'm real. I'm not backsliding, I'm being called forward. Think about who in your life celebrates your callings, who tries to shrink it. And how can you surround yourself with more people that celebrate you, celebrate your calling? Leaving a religious space or outgrowing old circles, it can be lonely, but it's also an invitation to a new community. After I left my church, I lost friends, but God sent me new people. He sent me new mentors, fellow seekers, and creative souls who encouraged me to shine, who encouraged me to show my light boldly, loudly. Trust that as you step into your calling, God's going to send you the right people. Your tribe is out there. Reach out to somebody who inspires you. Try joining a new group. Shameless plug for two weirdos. Start a conversation with someone who gets it. Let me ask you this. What did you have to leave behind to finally walk with God? Or what would you have to leave behind to finally walk with God? For me, it was the need to be a good girl, the one who never questioned anything, never challenged, never made waves. But I stopped asking, what will they think? And I started asking, what is God saying? 1 Samuel 16:7 says that man looks at the outward, God sees the heart. God doesn't care about your credentials, He cares about your calling. What old labels, roles, and expectations do you need to release from your life? What new identity is God inviting you to embrace? Here's your challenge for this week. Grab a journal or pull up the Notes app in your phone and think about, where in your life have you been playing small to fit in? What's one divine assignment that you feel nudged to say yes to, even if it's uncomfortable, even if it's unconventional? Who in your life space celebrates your calling? Conversely, who tries to shrink it? What does showing up for God look like for you this week? Try one of those bold things this week. Say yes to an opportunity, speak your truth, or rest when you're called to rest. Reach out to somebody who encourages your growth, and practice saying no to something that drains you. No is a complete sentence. Say yes to something that fulfills you. May you have the courage to stop playing small. May you have the clarity to recognize your calling. May you have the communities to support you on your journey. And may you have the conviction to walk boldly in your God-given power. If this episode helped you, let us know in the comments. Share it with somebody who needs it, and download the free spiritual gifts guide at the link below. Follow us on Instagram at 2weirdosofficial and join our community, www.twoweirdos.us. And remember, you don't need permission to be powerful. You just need alignment. I'll see you next episode, weirdos. Stay bold, stay free, and stay in your divine power.